Okay, perfect. Blossom Johnston, Idaho Partners for Good. Today is Voices from the Field, Reimagining Giving in a Shifting Landscape. We're going to have a public dialogue about how do we position those people that really truly care about Idahoans and are thriving for what is being forecasted, both from the philanthropic sector as well as a larger public sector. So with that, I'll just tell you that in the last few months, I've read probably a dozen different articles about what's happening in the larger philanthropic sector nationally and how they're responding. So I started seeing all that, and I'm like, huh, is Idaho any different? We normally say we are. So I thought, well, let's check and make sure. So we went on a tour, a listening tour of philanthropic foundations that fund in Idaho. And so what we wanted to learn, because of what we heard from our nonprofit partners, there were three things we really wanted to hear about. And so the purpose for our listening sessions was one, to understand how external pressures were shaping philanthropy. Two, to align with the nonprofit needs and realities here in Idaho. And three, to identify opportunities for bold collaborative action. Next slide. So this next slide is in regards to our who we heard from. Hopefully it's the next. There we go.
There we go. Okay, we practiced this, I promise.
Who we heard from and what we asked. All right, so this is the list of different foundations that we spoke to. And as you can see, they have different funding ranges on an annual basis. Some are hyperlocal, some are regional in focus, and some are national. They fund nationally. But they represent about 150 million dollars a year in giving in Idaho. So uh, what we then asked is, first of all, we wanted to kind of understand. So roughly, how much does this equate to for nonprofit funding in Idaho? And it's about a little less than 25% of grant making in Idaho. Uh, I will also note that not all of that 148 to 150 million is specifically to Idaho, because some of these foundations do fund other states besides us. And so the interview questions were designed to, one, understand how those external pressures were shaping their priorities. Two, their pain points and urgent concerns. Three, whether there was a sense of urgency about funding differently. Four, if they were exploring any strategic adjustments or experiments. Five, their level of caution or desire for innovation, so the both ends of the spectrum. Six, their appetite for collaboration. And seven, who do they go for when they need insight and support? Who are the backbone organizations? Next slide. So why we think this report matters right now is because there was this fairly significant report from the Urban Institute that indicated that Idaho's nonprofits receive over $643 million annually from government funding sources. And according to that report, it directly impacts about 477 Idaho nonprofits. Now, we do want to footnote that with that little asterisk. We know it's a big underestimate because it doesn't include funding from reimbursements or contracted services. So the number is much higher, and neither does it include those that file the 990 easy. So first thing is, foundation leaders were reporting 2 to 4 times the volume of funding requests from the nonprofit sector in Idaho. And here's a reality check. There's no way philanthropy alone can fill that gap. They would have to give away 4 times more than they're giving, and that's way beyond even their corpus. So we need to, as a nonprofit sector, we need to really check our reality about going to philanthropy. Not that we shouldn't, but that we can't expect them to fill this significant gap that has happened because of government cuts. So this is a really good statement, level setting for the whole nation by Una Osley with Lily's Family School of Philanthropy. They're kind of the gold standard. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of volatility, especially in financial markets. When you're not sure what's happening and the news is changing, that sometimes leads to donors just being uncertain and not acting. Uncertainty can dampen giving. I will tell you that the research is also pretty clear. Individual donations are down in the last couple of years. So this just strengthens that statement. So next slide.
With a
So
bit of a delay.
our foundations that we talk to are rethinking their roles. So here's a couple of things that we need to realize, that we are at a perfect inflection point or they are, including Idaho Partners for Good. We're at a very good inflection point to take stock of what we invest in and how. So there is a positive sentiment towards innovation. That's what we were hearing from the philanthropists. And they have a very strong desire for relevance. There's a tension being held by philanthropists between, do we stay neutral in this civic environment, or do we take bold action? So that tension is real for them. They realize they have power and they have influence, but they're not sure how they can use it or whether they really should. They really are looking at upstream, long term, versus more of the reactive giving that you saw in COVID, we saw a lot of foundations that were just trying to keep things afloat. Philanthropists learn from that, and they're not as quick to go to emergency funding, an emergency funding approach. But a lot of them are suffering from an identity crisis right now, and they're rethinking, what do we do in today's what is being forecasted? What is our role as philanthropists? They have a general uncertainty about the future of our political, cultural, and funding landscapes. They have a perceived harm to the national giving infrastructure as a result of these government cuts. And they know that philanthropy alone can't fill the gap left by the government cuts. So I will tell you, there was some very strong sentiment around the tone and tenor of our political and cultural landscapes. They're not sure whether they're going to step in to the political fray, and if they do, at what cost. So next slide. So what's behind the crisis is most of the people on this call are nonprofits. And if you can relate to being overwhelmed, to having staffing challenges, to having tech challenges and admin challenges, foundations are feeling the same thing. So that was kind of a new thought for me, is that what you're struggling with, they're trying to figure out as well. So we know that many of you are also on alternate budgets right now. Your money didn't come in, and so you're really trying to just keep things whole. So you are asking them to fill your funding shortfalls. I'll tell you two real quick stories from this report. One was from a government agency that had asked one of the philanthropic foundations for 22 million. That was 4 times what they actually give to all of their giving in 1 year. There was another higher ed program that asked for 12 million. And when asked by this foundation if they were willing to collaborate, they were not. So they got nothing. So I just 2 stories from the field. So there is a desire From the philanthropist side, for more collaboration on the nonprofit side, what we're pushing them to is more collaboration on the philanthropic side as well. Foundation staff are under a capacity strain. When you're sending in applications, they're under the mountain of those applications right now. And the funding in general is still focused on programs, which means not that they're restricted, and not systems, which is more of the unrestricted funding. Let's see, what else do I have on that one in particular? Oh, okay. They are much more open to strategic responsive grant making. And this much we know, both sides of that philanthropic coin, the philanthropists and those that get the philanthropy, both sides are struggling. They're starting to acknowledge that there's a need for capacity building out in the field, and but not very many are doing that yet. Oh, okay. So we told them, we let the philanthropists know that we talked to. We did a seminar with them a few weeks ago, and we let them know that the environment that they've created is really causing and has caused the nonprofit sector to compete rather than collaborate. And so we really want them to start looking at how do they incentivize more of the collaborative side of things. All right, next slide. Okay, so when all was said and done, we came up with these 7 recommendations that do come both from our experience working with lots and lots of nonprofits, but also from the best practices as well as the research. So one of the first things that almost every one of these people that we interviewed said was they don't have time to think strategically. So that is one of the first things that we recommended, is that they build into their calendars ways to think strategically at that higher level, so to protect that time. The second recommendation was really around this notion and this need for cross-sector convening. By that, we mean not just philanthropy, not just nonprofits. It includes the business community, the government community, our faith communities. There really needs to be a space created for cross-sector convening. Then infrastructure tools. So like I said, we work with a lot of nonprofits, but they don't have the tools to shore up their infrastructure, their operations, their marketing, their evaluation, their technology, their admin, all of those parts and pieces. So there is a need for there not just to develop, but to distribute those kinds of tools. We think that there's a huge need for foundations to truly understand what's happening on the front lines of the nonprofit sector. Here's what I know from working with a number of different philanthropic foundations. Uh, they tend to get into an echo chamber, and so we have to help them see that they need to get to the front line and really understand what's truly happening in the world of the nonprofits. There is also a need because there's often a disconnect between what the philanthropist wants for impact and what the nonprofit can provide. So there is a need for a shared impact language. We need places for them to learn, and we need places for them to, as like collaborative giving spaces. And then the 7th recommendation we gave them was to support your storytelling and the impact that you're making across not just the nonprofit sector, but across, more importantly, the philanthropic sector. So when we asked one of our questions about effective philanthropy, this is one of the respondents. They said, it means enabling community champions, the person that gets things done, especially in rural communities. So you'll notice that we just put participant instead of someone's name. That was so that we could protect their identity, so that they could disclose as much as they did disclose. All righty. Okay, we have a few more slides and then we're going to open it up for dialogue. We believe this is one of the first places that we have to start, is cross-sector solutions. That's why we provided this today. is we were hoping for all the government, business, nonprofit, philanthropy all together to hear the same thing and begin to identify places where there might be some natural synergies. So there is a desire for peer convening and collaboration from the philanthropy sector. We know that exists in the nonprofit sector. There is a lack of a neutral infrastructure to support it. And we do know that we're seen as a trusted neutral convener. So I love this statement from a participant. You can't nonprofit your way out of everything. It is going to cost Idaho to have these services delivered by nonprofits. So I know a lot of you can say yes and amen to that one. Okay, next. Okay, so we started getting asked when we put the draft out to those that we listened to, and the so what question came up. You know, what is going to be the impact? So we started putting the data together, and many of you on this call already know this. You know that these, up to 40,000 will lose their Medicaid coverage, and maybe another 35,000 their insurance. That puts in-home care, that puts rural hospital access, that puts provider rates all at risk. So we know that these will have some unintended consequences, and especially in our rural communities. And then additionally, you've got the SNAP, housing, and legal aid, all of those cuts that happened that are affecting lots and lots of Idahoans across the state. Okay, next slide. And then you've got your behavioral health and recovery services that took some big hits. So all in all, there is a perfect storm brewing. And the forecast for Idaho it doesn't look great. So we as people who care need a space for us to start asking the tough questions and for there to be an honest reckoning about what needs to happen. So I did highlight that particular statement because it is in our report. We reference the foundation excise tax. We released this report before the final legislation. They did strip the excise tax for foundations out of it, so it will remain the same, but they actually added new restrictions for individual donors that could make it more difficult for individual donors. So we keep one, but there's some hits on the private donor side. Okay, that was a ton of information all at one time. So let's look at, Brian, can you go to that last one? Let's hold on this one for just a second and just open it up for questions about what you just heard. Does it surprise you? Does any of this surprise you? Yes, Heather.
Hi, this is Karen Sharpnick with the Idaho Immunization Coalition. So could you just take a couple of minutes and explain what your organization does so we have a better understanding of it?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for that
Thank you.
question. Thank you. Okay, so your colleague Heather there has been deep in the trenches with us for the last 3 years with Jesse Tree. And it's because she understands that Idaho Partners for Good, our mission is to reinvent how people give, how they share their expertise, and how we do greater good together. So Heather's been part of that approach for the last 3 years with Jesse Tree. Our vision is to develop stronger, healthier, better equipped nonprofits so that they can do more of what they do best. So that requires us to work on both sides of what we call the philanthropic coin. That philanthropic coin includes the philanthropy side, whether it's individual, corporate, fund, philanthropic, all of that side of the equation. But then you cannot expect, no nonprofit should expect that a person will just give them money and they can do whatever they want with it. They have to have the means to not only deliver on their mission, but to be able to evaluate that. So that's where we come in. Our funding model, full transparency, our funding model is we get donations, very few grants because we're not sexy. We're not on the front lines feeding the children, but we are the ones who are feeding the directors that are feeding those children. So we're the behind the scenes. And then we also have a consulting service because of our model. We want to monetize what we do best, which is helping nonprofits, helping for-profits, helping government systems to actually do their work better, more effectively. Does that answer your question, or do you have any follow-up? Okay. Other questions? Okay, then let's move in.
Oh, I had a question actually.
Yes,
You can hear me?
yes, Ansam.
Thank you. Anselm Sadiki, Children's Home. First of all, thank you so much. This is actually, again, it's such a information that we all have already experienced and we keep seeing already, and it's quite sort of comforting that you have done sufficient enough work to actually put this together, because it helps to actually be able to go out there really with a very confirming information how all these changes are affecting nonprofit missions and how we implement our programs, but also our relationship with the donors, the philanthropic organizations and stuff. I know that there is a lot of thinking, and certainly what you have presented in terms of what people are thinking about the upstream when it comes to how philanthropy can support the work and stuff like that. But at the same time, I'm just wondering, is actually the reactive giving avoidable, especially when we can never predict exactly the circumstances that might contribute to everyone running like a headless chicken, trying to figure out exactly how to respond to situations that result in an abrupt change, as what we have seen with the cut in public funds that really results in many of us trying to think that should we continue to with our mission, or should we simply close doors, or where do we get enough support to continue our mission? So I'm wondering, how is it possible that we can avoid the reactive giving?
So Ansam, you're asking the $1 million question right there. And so as a nonprofit director myself, this is a time of reckoning. We have to be bold. We have to be courageous enough to ask the very questions, do we need to exist at this time? Because if it's a better business model to merge with somebody else, to start a co-op, or to do much more back office together, then those are the things that you're going to have to really, really think about right now. We do have a strategic partnership rubric because we're asking those questions. So we have a rubric, and we're happy to open source it, whereby you and whoever else you're thinking about partnering with can actually do the due diligence to see, is this a good fit? Not everybody's going to get through this. This is a much bigger burden. And the philanthropists are saying that. They're saying, we've not seen this before. And these are not new philanthropic foundations. These guys have been around, most of them that on that list have been around for a while. They have not seen this before.
I
Hey,
have a question.
yes.
So in the current climate, what is your suggestion for nonprofits that really lean in on initiatives that once were DEI? Do you suggest that we change our how we're making that ask? Get creative? What are your suggestions?
Everybody's going to have to do business differently.
Okay.
So Trish, when we're out there, we're advocating for the nonprofit sector, but the strong will start collaborating at a much higher level. So the whole issue of DEI is very, it is what it is here in Idaho. Okay, as a woman of color, I will just tell you that it's very disappointing personally, and it's really about the message of everyone belonging. And what we're trying to do is unite behind Idaho, around Idahoans. And we come in all shapes, sizes, colors, political experiences. So it really is about the storytelling, Trish, and getting super good. That's why we had one of those recommendations. We have to tell our stories in ways that are going to resonate.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Let's see. I haven't been keeping track of the chat, so let me go look.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we should tap into the chat there.
Hey, Blossom, could I speak on something that's in the chat?
Sure.
So there's some discussion in the chat about, the importance of educating like the state legislature, and Blossom, you mentioned a minute ago. Well, I guess in my opinion, there should be some sort of joint effort of making that a priority. Basically, in my opinion, coming to the state legislature and saying nonprofits can more efficiently provide the needs of the citizens than the state government can. I think if we come in with that argument, or I don't know if we want to say argument, but just present it in that way, rather than being combative, coming in and saying, we can be a tool for the state legislature and be more efficient than a bureaucrat trying to do it. And so if we can come up with some sort of joint venture to, and as somebody in the chat mentioned, like doing it before the next session starts or whatever, I think that could be a really good way of presenting it.
I agree, Bryce. And we have sent it to all the legislators that I know personally. And we're asking you to also send it to those that you know. If there is a desire to do one of these specifically for legislators, happy to do that before the legislature ever starts or during the legislature. We know that they are a very, very important player and that we have to dial in our message. I think with the Idaho Nonprofit Center, with their legislative help, they've got lobbyists, I believe. We could put something together, but it does have to be a united front, not just of the nonprofit sector. It has to be a united front with other government entities, the business sector, faith communities. They all play a part in keeping people from falling off the cliff. Kelly?
Thanks, Blossom. I was just going to say, as a former legislator, I would recommend the education happens prior to the session rather than during. I mean, they need to have some type of foundation before they go in and start working on policy and budgets anyway. And once they're in the session, they're just inundated with so many different needs that you'll have more attention placed on this and better time to visit with and answer and help guide them now than you would during a very busy session. Just my thoughts.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Kelly, and I see that in the chat now. I do want to ask, and if you're willing, we do have a former First Lady on the call, Patricia Kempthorne, who I did work with, and she was the advocate, bar none, for families and children in Idaho. You know, you have a lot of wisdom, Patricia. I don't know if you would feel comfortable with coming off mute and maybe weighing in on this particular issue of policy for children and families and others. Yeah. We're going to give that just a little more time to see if she feels comfortable or not. I know she's got a lot on her plate, so. Okay, let's go to the questions on the next slide, Brian. Okay, so these are the kinds of questions that we think are important at this point in time. There might be other questions that you think are more important. If you have questions that you think are more important for a cross-sector group to look at, then please put them in the chat. Otherwise, we think that these are some very salient places for us to start. And I would say you can come off mute or use the chat, but I think this is a good starting place. I will also let you know that this is not a place to bash any sector. This is a place for us to look at how do we unite. So I do ask you to, if you have comments, that you would keep them healthy dialogue.
I have a few comments.
Sure.
As far as the systemic reach, I would like to see a reach out to libraries and Chamber of Commerce. I think, and I could be wrong here, that the legislatures representing all the different districts across the state may want to hear from their own constituents. And what are their constituents saying about the needs in their local communities? And to me, the already systems in place are Chamber of Commerce and libraries. There could be others, universities, school districts, teachers, teacher associations, those kinds of things. But if we're going to go to the legislator before the legislative session, and rather than pounding on them for this is what we want, this is what we need, ask them, have you heard from your community about this issue? The issue of the lack of coordinated efforts and providing for those in need and families and, you know, the things you've already described. So I think that's kind of a little bit of a twist on, rather than lobbying the legislature, is asking the legislature if they've heard from their community. If they haven't, then maybe that's the place systemically to start. Start with the systems that are already in place, ask them those questions, present that by region or by district to our legislators, so that when the legislative session starts, they will already have in their mind, hey, these are some issues that our constituents are coming up with, and these are some of the solutions that the people here in this forum have already thought about, ready to put in place.
Mm-hmm. So Harley, if I'm just scrolling the participant list here, if the 42 people on this dialogue, if each one of us pushed this information through our networks, we would literally reach pretty much everybody in the state of Idaho with this information. So this is where this is so important. And we believe it's one of those do or die moments, one of those, you know, die on the hill moments. But we can't do it alone. We have to pull together as people who love Idaho and work together to ensure that people don't fall off the cliff.
Hey Blossom, this is Maureen O'Toole, and I just have a question. The governor's office used to have someone whose role was actually working with nonprofits in the state. Is that position still in place? And if it is, can we leverage off that to create a collaborative communication and a plan?
That's a great idea, Maureen. So I believe that was something Bobby used to, uh, um, Bobby Muehlman? Anyway, I
Bobby
believe,
Joe?
yes, Bobby Joe. Yes, I believe
Okay.
she used to hold that. I don't know if someone else is doing that, but easy to find out. Okay, other thoughts around what kind of what would it take to build a system that prevents families and others from reaching crisis in the first place? I know we've all been over the years. I know some of you on this call have been in the trenches for a long time. And we've all wanted to work at the systems level. But what would it actually take to build a system whereby every single family that calls Idaho home wouldn't be in crisis?
Well, at the risk of oversimplifying this, it would take convenings like this to come together so we know who's in that space, but also an organization that would be willing to own the conversation and the collaboration.
Hi, I'll chime in. This is Autumn Kersey. I really appreciate this question, but I don't know that it's possible for the nonprofit sector to completely prevent families from facing crisis, right? It is such an ecosystem of education, of policy, of healthy communities, of health care, from birth up, to put families in situations where that generational trauma has been severed and they're no longer at risk of crisis. So as much as we all have bleeding hearts and want to save the world, we can't do it without all of those other systems at the table.
Autumn, absolutely spot on. That's why it has to be cross-sector collaboration. Otherwise, we won't even begin to get there. So, yes. Crispin?
Hello. So looking at the sort of medium and long term, getting sort of past the trying to stay afloat in the crisis mode right now, I wonder if there is much effort or if there is much utility in a coordinated effort to capture the stories of lost impact, to demonstrate, in 5 years' time, here is the impact of the loss of funding or the loss of capacity among nonprofit groups, at least to track these stories and the data to come back in the medium and long term and say, hey, here is we tried this out and we saw these impacts. Maybe we could, improve on what we did before, go back to what worked, keep what works, and move that way. And I sort of bring this up because I'm sort of in a small nonprofit group, and it's a pretty rough time out there for a re-startup, as I've been saying. And so a lot of the work that we're doing is at risk of falling off the track. And so capturing stories for groups like mine and another a group of cohorts I know who are struggling might be impactful to come back to in the future to say, hey, here's the impact that we could have had if we did have this level of support that we did have previously.
So that's one of the reasons why we're recording this, is so that we can share it with especially the philanthropic sector and those that do have some power and influence. So Angela, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I was going to echo what was said a little bit before. It seems like there is a piece that comes before systems, in the sense that I think what makes Idaho unique. And for those of you that are maybe native Idahoans, or my experience, at least in the part of Idaho that I live, is just a general mentality, at least from those that have lived here forever, or natives, or generational, that we're supposed to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and not need anybody else. And that really affects people asking for help, but it also affects how people see someone else in need. And that is the kind of thing that is feeding into how legislative decisions are made. We don't have a community mindset that we belong to each other and that we are here to take care of each other. And if neighbors were simply paying attention to what's happening next door to them and feeling a communal mindset that we are here to care for each other, we wouldn't even need the systems most of the time. But it feels like part of it is just how we start talking about community and belonging to each other, viewing each human person with dignity. Some of the really basic things that you feel like shouldn't have to be said, but they actually do have to be said, because yeah, there's a mindset, and I question if we can even shift it before additionally possible that there could be political changes that put funding back in place, and like this could be really temporary, but we don't know. But we still need to change the storyline and how we think about each other.
I think that can also be said for a lot of nonprofits too, as we're talking about collaboration and sharing resources, this sensation that if we're asking for help as a nonprofit, that somehow we're failing to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. If we're admitting that we're struggling, or we're not sure how we're going to keep the doors open. I think, that's a very good general statement about a lot of factors.
I'm wondering if, oh, Caitlin.
Hi, I was thinking about that question too, what it would take to build a system that prevents crisis, and about the holistic view and multiple sectors. And I feel like these sectors connecting with each other is mission critical. Like when we don't even know our neighbors exist, how can we help them? Sort of touching on that last idea. So I think that connection, communication, and understanding is really fundamental, possibly so fundamental that I'm just preaching to the choir that is here,
So Caitlin, great point. And I'm going to actually ask a couple of the state organizations that are on this call if they would unmute, and just from their seat, which is covering all 44 counties and across the state, if they, they're sitting in a different seat than many. Are there some things that they're seeing from a systems perspective? Okay, well, we don't want to put you on the spot, but I do know when we sit in different places, we do have a different lived experience often. And so, if afterwards, we can figure that out afterwards if you want. But let's go to the next slide because we are running out of time. So, all right, $1 million question. Who's in? Who wants to be part of a cross-sector collaboration? That's the first question. And then the second question is, what role do you see yourself and your organization taking? And then the third big question is, it's going to require funding to pull people together in order to do this work, uniting people, getting the materials, all the stuff that it requires is going to require funding. So I know a lot of you probably just got itchy when I asked about the, what role do you see yourself taking? Because every one of us is probably trying to just keep the doors open at this point. Many of us are just like, whew, anything to get a few more bucks in. And so trying to take on a new role could seem it'll tip you over. I get that. And at this stage of the game, we have to have everybody playing in some role. So I will ask you, maybe it looks like a collaboration with somebody on this call today, that maybe the 2 or 3 of you go to a funder to do something that is mutually beneficial. You know, I know that's oversimplifying things, but it can happen. So if you see somebody in this call that you're like, I wonder, I would say exchange emails right now on this call, and get together with them and see if there isn't a way to create a little bandwidth, a little breathing room, with somebody in partnership instead of competing, because that's a big deal for a lot of us, a lot of nonprofits, is we have been forced to compete and we need to collaborate. Heather?
Hi, it's Karen Sharpnick again. So I hear what you're saying, and you're saying if a few of us can get together and maybe collaborate, but we don't know who's on the call. Is there any way that we can have like a list of, here are the organizations that have come on the call, so we can say, oh my gosh, they're like-minded, or this is a possible collaboration? Because the question is very hard to answer. Not being negative, it's like after 47 minutes, you're asking, how can we get involved? But we're still learning right now.
Thank you. Thank you. I just made an assumption that many of you knew each other, and that was a wrong assumption. So I think what we're gonna do is, I'm gonna just start calling people. And if you'll come on and just tell us who you are, and just the 30-second elevator pitch, okay? And Maria, yeah.
This is Connie. One thing I'm just sitting here thinking about is, I know people really want to join causes that are organized. They have good, clear vision of what they're trying to accomplish, and kind of tapping into what Autumn's comments were is, I think it would be really valuable to make a list of all of the ecosystems per se, and try to find a good representative from each ecosystem. The one that comes to mind that I'm just thinking of, not political whatsoever in this comment, but the Idaho Business for Education, where when they really started pulling things together, I remember watching this ecosystem of corporate and educators and pull together to try to add value to education. And while it had some political things, and we're talking about how do we engage our legislators and all of that, but it just feels like there's so many pieces to the ecosystem that if we were able to organize our thoughts around who should be at the table, which ecosystem should be at the table, and then try to find folks that pull them together to get some really good thoughts around how do we add legs to this and how do we approach this. I think that would be helpful. I definitely love the idea that we all should know who's on this call and who would like to proceed forward. But I think that might be also an additional benefit that we might be able to accomplish going forward.
Absolutely. So yes, I planned on sharing who's here today, because it all starts with relationship. Nothing worthwhile happens outside of a relationship with people that you want to be with. So having said that, yes, we'll share this information. Maybe premature to actually go down this road, but at the same time, I hate to miss opportunities where people are willing to raise their hand. So with that, I think somebody had put something in the chat. Are there some things rolling? Let's see. All right.
Hey, Blossom, it's Paula. I put some things in the chat. Would agree with Connie, would also maybe emphasize the urgency. As we right now are having conversations, legislative agendas are are being set.
Right.
Some of them feel a little cementish even already, and we haven't left August. So I think the urgency of coming together is important. I think really defining the cost of what happens when
Right.
so-and-so goes away so that we know what we're solving, what the issue is that we're solving. I think the challenge will be convincing our legislators that somebody needs to do this work because it's important to Idaho and why it's important. And if there's benefit to the legislature to empower nonprofits to continue this work, being able to define that and help them understand that, I think will help them be more likely to feel compelled to do something different.
Right. And I don't think we want to carry anything too far without first getting a temperature and hopefully a partnership with the Idaho Community Foundation and the Idaho Nonprofit Center. So I do think that that is super first steps now that now that the report from philanthropy and the white paper are out. I think it's time for us to say, okay, what's next? And primary relationships with key legislative partners, I think is super important. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for weighing in, Paula. Okay, well, here, I don't know, let's see. All right, so I see something from Autumn. Yes. Oh, okay, Autumn, that's great. Thank you for messaging. This is check your chat and go hit that link because I think that will give you the beginnings of how to talk about this. But then please use the reports that we have just released and circulate those as widely as possible. We're hoping that it comes across nonpartisan. We don't really care what political party anybody belongs to. We care about Idahoans staying whole. So, Bryce?
Yeah, I was just gonna say somebody in the chat earlier in the session asked something about at the nonprofit conference in the next couple of days if there was gonna be any sort of this message being sent. And I guess I'll plug that there is going to be the movie called Uncharitable, which is going to be viewed several times at the conference. If you haven't heard about it or seen it, there's a lot of good information in that movie that we collectively can use to educate the legislature and just the public in general. A lot of misconceptions about how nonprofit organizations work and how funding or how funds should be used and just all of that. So yeah, if you're going to be at the conference or if you're not, the movie Uncharitables has a lot of really good educational material in there.
Okay, well, I'm going to open it up for Foster, one of our board members. He's our new secretary. Foster, he's on our board. We've got a number of our consultants. Connie is on this call. We may have another couple of our board members, but I would be remiss if I did not just say thank you to our board and our consultants and our teammates. We have over 100 people involved in Idaho Partners for Good in our work. We can't serve nonprofits without experts. And so I just want to thank them for leaning in hard. They're all seeing what y'all do in the trenches. We so appreciate what you're doing, and we're trying to find ways to support you. So Foster, do you have anything to help us close at the end here?
Been a lot of discussion about collaboration, and as a board and then in discussions with Blossom, we've talked about what next steps might look like. We're willing to continue to pursue the collaboration efforts, but we're looking for one or two or however many leaders that might be on this call that would help partner with us so that load is an all on Idaho Partners for Good, and it would be shared. The collaboration is something that it's not only looking at how to come up with common issues and try and solve them, but some of the people on this call may have already solved some of the problems that NPOs are having in the state, and sharing solutions in a collaborative effort. There's just it's almost priceless once you're willing to admit to somebody else that you've got an issue. It's going to be common across almost everybody probably on the call. Some people will have solved it already. And I think these discussions need to continue with this group of people, with additional people. I just would love to be able to see somebody step up and say, we're hearing what Blossom is saying. I would like to participate and continue to push this forward. So we're gonna be on it, but it would be nice to have some help.
Well, I'm a big believer that we can hand wring or we can hope bring. And I believe the people on this call are all hope bringers. And while we might do a little bit of hand wringing when we're by ourselves, I really do, I want to encourage you. If you did not register for this ahead of time and you want to get this recording, you want to get the reports, you need to drop your email in the chat real quick before we finish. So with that, if you have anything else you'd like to share, we're going to hold that space for the next couple of minutes. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us today.
And I just wanted to add really quickly that there's both of those reports are on the homepage of our website so that you can take a look at them and share them easily from there. And also you can reach out to us and we would be happy to share with you PDF versions, PNG, any version of those reports that you would like so that they're easy for you to share with your network.